Hey. So, my name is Alaa Barakat. I am here today to talk about being an LGBTQ member within the Muslim community. I'm going to give a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Lebanon, in a very small country, maybe about 1,000 people, where talking about homosexuality was nothing that you ever wanted to talk about. People had very strict views about homosexuals, and it's one of the topics that people avoided at all costs. And I feel like there are a lot of people who are going through the same thing, especially in the Islamic community. A lot of kids who, instead of like maybe just playing and have fun, which they are still playing and having fun, but they're dealing with these things that they should not be dealing with, like thinking about that you're wrong and that you're not worthy at such an early age. I think this is very unhealthy for your psychological development, and unfortunately we have to go through that sometimes as LGBTQ members within the community. But once I moved here and I start seeking other voices, other LGBTQ people within the community, I found a lot of support. I kind of like, seeing people who are just like you in a sense, you take comfort, you feel you're not alone. Unfortunately, that was not the case when I was in Lebanon, because I did not know any people who were going through the same struggle. It's very hard to find them, because everybody's like in the closet, everybody doesn't want to talk about it. Now here's the thing. After being in touch with these groups, with these people, and taking comfort, and kind of like gives me a lot of strength, I decided to come out to my family, which is never like a good thing to do in a sense within the Muslim community. However, to my surprise, my family was quite accepting. I was quite shocked, because sometimes you have like ideas about your family and say, oh my God, if they find out that I'm gay, then I'm done. They're going to disown me, they're not going to talk to me, it's going to be a nightmare. But most of my family members were quite cool. They're modern Muslims. They don't like take religion to the heart in the sense of like they have to follow everything that the text says. So their approach is pretty much secular in the sense they take whatever they think is good for this time, and they kind of like just leave things behind that no longer kind of like work in this day and age. My mom, however, she had a lot of struggle with it. She's not an educated woman. She has a great heart, but she's not an educated woman, so she had a hard time embracing the fact that her youngest son is gay, and she's never going to see my kids. So that was really hard for her. I told her, Mom, you have a lot of grandkids. You don't need to see mine, but she's a mother. So exposure within the community, I think, is very important. I don't want to like glorify coming out, because I know a lot of people have different situations where they can't just come out. Maybe if they come out, they truly going to be disowned. Maybe they're not financially independent, they can't do it. So there are different experiences out there than mine. So I can't generalize mine and say mine should be the standard. But for me, coming out to my family and just letting them know that there's someone within their beloved ones who is gay, who is, I hate this word, normal, because we have certain ideas about who is gay and who's not. Usually, if you're you have feminine qualities, you're generally thought of as a gay man, and if you're just like a regular guy, then you can't be in. And so me coming out, it kind of like challenged that idea, that mentality that, oh no, well, he can be just like us, and he just simply has a different sexual preference. So if it starts happening more, if I feel like more people choose to start talking about this thing within their families, maybe immediate families at the beginning, slowly it will start changing the general kind of like image that people have about homosexuality and about gay people. So, coming out is important. It does change because it's again exposure, and people usually have to deal with it. Usually if it's not somebody who is your family or someone you love, you kind of like just ignore it or avoid it, because why do you have to deal with it? I don't love this person, I don't care for him or her. But once it's your family, then you have to deal with it, and you have to ask the hard questions, and you have to come eventually in terms of whether or not you want to embrace that person for who they are or not. So the struggle was there with my mom especially. Over time, over the years, I had to simply keep reminding her that this is who I am, and I'm a happy person, and I'm simply as anybody else. And you know, with the years going on, she has finally embraced it. She has finally come in terms of accepting the fact that she cannot change me. It's impossible. She has come in terms of like saying, well, although I do believe in the religion and in the text, but this is my son, and I choose my love over that. And this was a great thing because, I mean, out of all the people in my life, Mom is my most important person, and I definitely wanted her to just be okay with it and embrace it. Otherwise, I mean, if other people said, well, you know, we can't talk to you, yeah, I'd have been sad for a little bit, and then maybe just, you know, kind of like ignored it eventually. But with my mom, it's different. I have a very strong relationship with my mom, and I wanted it to be there even after I came out. And so these discussions about being gay in the community, they need to happen more. We need to have more gay people talk about it, but we also need more people like, you know, who are not gay to also talk about it. So once the discussion is created, once we can communicate openly about being gay within the Muslim community, I think that will change the attitude towards, you know, homosexuality in a great way. I don't know what else. Here, I have some notes. It's not typically me. So, in regards to religion and just interpreting the text, I feel here's my kind of disagreement with some gay guys who, or girls who want to be gay and Muslim at the same time. For me personally, I find it hard. I find it hard to find like things within the text that kind of like would agree with my lifestyle, in a sense. So I chose to be not only a secular Muslim, but I kind of like somehow distanced myself from religion for a while because I was like, I can't be Muslim and gay at the same time. But then I saw some of my friends who happen to be also gay and Muslim, and they practice their religion, and I asked them, like, how can you do it? Like, how can you practice a religion that basically says that you're wrong, that you're not as equal as other people? Well, he goes, well, I don't really care about that. He goes, I see love in the religion. I see the things that are very good in the religion, and I choose to follow that and to practice that. And my relationship is with God, and it's not with the text. And I feel like a lot of gay people, you know, come to this agreement too. They kind of like just they focus on the relationship with God and not the text itself. For me personally, I've not, you know, my focus was never on the text itself, because to me, I don't believe it's necessarily the God's word. I believe it's man-made, but this is me. Again, some people have different views about it. So I cannot like allow something that's man-made to dictate my life or to dictate my views or who I love and who I don't love. So yeah. I mean, anybody have any questions? I don't know. Yeah.
So when I used to go like to the Sufi mosque, Sufi mosque,
Yeah.
I met this guy who was gay and Muslim, and that was like the first time I was like, you know, met somebody who was. No, it was the Masjid al-Farh in Manhattan. But anyway, the point is, like, I was like, I didn't understand, like, how did he, like, I just wanted to know how he justified himself. And I'm going to tell you what he said. He said, well, being gay was wrong back in the day when like, men and women had to produce kids. Now it doesn't matter when we have moved population. So the reason why it was wrong has been, the reason doesn't exist anymore. I thought that was just a way for him to justify himself.
Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about that?
No, I feel the same way. I feel like a lot of times, unfortunately. I mean, it's not unfortunate. Again, if you want to use like that excuse in a sense that back then, people needed to reproduce, things like that, I think that if that gives you comfort, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Do I agree with it? No. I don't use the fact that, maybe when the religion came, it came because, people needed to reproduce, so they said that, homosexuality was wrong, and it's something that you should not, engage yourself in if you have those feelings. I don't agree with that, but for me personally, again, it's my experience. I don't feel like I need the text to validate my life or how I live my life. So I've chosen to go beyond the text. And again, for me, when it comes to Islam, I think the only thing that kind of is not open for interpretation in Islam is the unity of God, or the world, and everything else is open to interpretation. So for these people, I'm glad they can find something within the religion that they can interpret and says, well, it doesn't really specify or say that I'm a bad person for being gay or for engaging in homosexual activities. But again, it gives them comfort. I don't think it's a bad thing. I just don't do it myself. I don't need that justification. But that's again because I'm not really a practicing Muslim. And it's different if somebody chooses to be a practicing Muslim. I think that's the struggle, that they have to find things within the text or the religion that make them feel accepted, if that makes sense.
Okay, so just a quick question. I've never personally really looked into homosexuality within Islam, and I'm completely clueless as to what Islam says. If there's anything specific or explicit in the law against homosexuals, and yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's usually the text that's used the most when it comes to homosexuality, it's kind of like a wrong act. It goes back to the story of Lut. But then again, the story itself, where in that village where a lot of the people were homosexuals and they got punished for being homosexuals. But this is, I think the story is not only in Islam, I think it's in other religions as well. So, but they use that usually as the main kind of source of saying that homosexuality is not something good, it's something to be condemned. However, they kind of forget that the village or the people of the village, Qawm Lut, were also engaged in other stuff that was not good. So it's not only about homosexuality, but again, this is what usually the religious leaders and people who practice Islam and are against homosexuality use that story in specific to kind of talk negatively about it.
Is that the only story that's really used? Is there any other point in the Quran?
I think not in the Quran itself. I don't think there's any other necessarily stories within the Quran itself about homosexuality. I may be wrong because I'm not a scholar of Quran, so I don't want to But personally, I don't think I've ever come across any other stories within the Quran. But within the Hadith itself, which is the Prophet, things that the Prophet have said and whatnot. I'm sure you would find things, that condemn homosexuality.
So I just wanted to add, where gay Muslims argue with, say, imams or people that don't agree with gay Muslims, they say that the story of Lot and Saddam was more about the village raping people that were coming to Israel, not about homosexuality. And they fight back and forth whether this is accurate or not, or whatnot. What's the truth from it? I don't know. It doesn't. Not a topic that concerns me really, but that's where they find a way to interpret it differently.
Yeah.
The latter does not. However, the latter uses hadith to tell them that the hadith supports our theory that it's about homosexuality, not about rape. And so I tried to add that part to it.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought you were asking.
Okay. The story of Lot is in the Bible. How much of that is actually in Islam? Because I know that there's the story you're talking about how homosexuality is haram because the story of Lot talks about the village going to rape and he offers up his daughters instead. Mm-hmm. The story gets worse. It gets worse.
They're complete strangers, and this guy offers his daughters to the villagers. Instead of these complete strangers, they're just walking themselves.
Well, if you go all that part.
It's still worse in the Bible. In the Bible, Lot's wife gets killed of the soul. So looking back, there's ability. That's not the wrong. That's the biggest.
Yeah, does it continue from there? Because Lot then takes his daughters and he gets drunk and they have sex with him.
Yeah.
Is that in Islam as well?
I don't think so.
That applies.
I don't think it goes that Islamic in detail. Yeah, that's not. I've not come across that in Islam.
Okay.
So it's not as detailed.
But because he's just that's just not as it goes against Islamic morality as well.
Yeah.
So I would say you can't use Lot as an example of upstanding citizen.
Yeah, but this is what they go back to that story whenever they want to argue against homosexuality.
Is there anything you had to do to convince, or any way you can convince family, community that homosexuality is not a choice, or is not?
It's usually like for me when they tell me like when my mom asked me if I chose to be gay, I told her, Mom, I mean, why would I even choose to be gay? Like, why would I choose going through the struggle, and through the fact that maybe some of the people I really love and care for would never talk to me again. But it's like just common sense in a sense. That's it. I mean, you can't probably, for someone who is set in their ways, like, especially with, people who are, again, uneducated, who are set in their ways, who are set in their beliefs, it's hard to make the argument. It's hard to kind of like sometimes convince them that it's not a choice. But at the end of the day, does it really matter, in a sense? Let's say somebody chooses to be, gay. That's their freedom. If somebody chooses to be gay, then that's perfectly fine. I mean, who is to say that this is wrong, that their choice is wrong? Do I believe it's a choice? Absolutely not. I know it from my experience, but I don't like go out of my way to try to kind of like convince people that it's not a choice. I simply tell them, I state my case, I tell them it's not a choice for me. I've known it since I was a kid. But I don't think a kid who's 4 years old is ready to make choices like that, And I tell them, why would I go to the struggle? And then they're like, well, But then they kind of like, once they think about it, I think, in their own space, they have to come in terms of, well, man, it's not really a choice. But then it's hard because, again, if they believe in God, then they're like, why is God, creating people who are homosexuals? And at the same time, in the text, God says that it's against nature and against this and against that. So, again, people have to go through that struggle too.
I just wanted to argue again, which is kind of like consistent with what I was saying this morning, is that so many of the discussions that we have in our community are always through the lens, the discourse, the religious discourse. Mm-hmm. Is it haram? Is it halal? What does the Quran say about this? What does the Bible say about this? And I think in that way, religion kind of prevails as a mean. It's the way that people, it's the de facto discourse that people run to in any situation that is difficult. So we don't talk, for instance, there's a case in our community which is really, really very tragic. This fellow got married, and in our family, in the extended family, to a very, very young woman who did not know that he was gay. She found out. He had already had a child with her, and he kind of exiled her, sent her back to Egypt. And this woman has a child to take care of. She's never remarried. And then the family, in complete denial and without any consideration for the social, emotional, economic, psychological consequences, got him another bride. And everybody knew. Everybody in the family knew, and there was a kind of silence. There was a sense that once he is happily married, this is not going to. And the second wife found out, had already had 3 children, is stuck in the marriage, and is completely devastated. And so I'm thinking, is there a way also for us to start talking about the consequences of denial upon people's lives, telling different kinds of stories, where people who love their children actually see what is happening because they're refusing, because the religious discourse by itself, that everything just has to pass the litmus test of is this haram or is this halal, is this permitted or not, is making our view of the world very one-dimensional and very limited, and people are really suffering tremendously, and the human cost of that is just tremendous. So I'm wondering if within the Muslim gay community there are other forms, memoir writing, storytelling, where people are really talking about this, not exclusively through the lens of religious discourse.
Unfortunately not. It's very unfortunate. We don't. I think the problem is, like, I feel like in our community, we truly have a problem opening up about things and talking about things like directly and the way they are. We have like such a shame in talking about subjects like sexuality and homosexuality especially. So I remember, I'll just give you like an example. When I came out, my mom told me, well, maybe if you marry a woman, you'll be fine. You'll have kids and you'll live a normal life. But I'm like, Mom, you understand that this is not what I want. And I will never be total with her. I'll never be complete. I'll never give her what she really deserves. And you want that for your own daughter? And she's like, no. I'm like, then why would you want it for somebody else's daughter? Like, why is it okay for me to marry someone while I can't be full with her? I can't be honest. And then it kind of like, yes, it's like, oh, okay, well, he's right. But a lot of times these families know that they're maybe or have an idea that their son, let's say, is gay, and they would push him to marry a woman because, again, we care a lot. Forget about the religion. We care a lot about what people have to say. You reach a certain age and you're not married, then people start questioning, oh, why is he in his 30s, or why is she in her 30s and they haven't got married yet? There's always like an issue, But again, these things, these discussions need to come to life. And sometimes people, maybe like women who were married to guys who end up being gay, maybe they also need to speak up and say, this is my experience. I know it's a hard thing to do, especially if you have kids from someone. It's a hard thing to talk about, but I think it's very healthy that we eventually start talking about it. And it's also important that the guys, the gay guys who know that this is who they are, do not do it to somebody like marry a woman, and just like eventually the marriage will collapse and it will have a very damaging psychological effects on, especially the woman, I think. But unfortunately, we don't have that discussion out there, and it's a problem because, again, if you don't have the discussion, you don't have the exposure, and people just like keep like a blind eye to it.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
My name is Hadi Sharafuddin.
Hello, Salah.
My name is Alaa.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Alaa, but you can call me Alaa. It's okay.
This is a discussion that I always have with a friend of mine who's a devout Muslim on whether homosexuality is a choice or is it biological, it's in our genes. And he always goes back to the notion that it can't be biological, otherwise, the Quran wouldn't have took a strong stance against it. If it's biological, as you said, God created, then it's contradictory. But he always refers to some examples in his life of trauma happening to people during their childhood, which led them to be, gay or homosexual. And I say, I find myself on the opposite side of that belief. I mean, I don't have a problem with gay homosexuality at all. Even if it's by choice and it's not biological, which really we don't have any experimental data or evidence up to now, except for one maybe experiment that was made on a group of identical twins. I don't know if you're familiar with that experiment where they took several groups of, or a large group of identical twins, and they found out that there's a tendency in one of the pairs of twins to be homosexual, then the margins were like 60%, whereas the other pair of the twin would be homosexual. So there is some indications to that experiment. But it's interesting to me that what you said is that as early as 4 years old, you kind of knew or
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like at 4 years old, I wasn't able to kind of like completely understand it because you're too young to understand, you know, like intellectually what it means, you know. But I knew from an early age that I liked boys, you know, not just as friends in a sense. I was going to just avoid that, but you know. But I knew that my interest was always toward a male figure, and but yeah, I did. And some people, they don't find out until they're, you know, much older. You know, just in my case, I found out as a child that I was gay. Again, I couldn't like completely fully understand it, but again, like with the studies, there aren't a lot of studies that have been made that kind of like say that being gay is biological. You know, there have been studies that say that, you know, if like you're the youngest of like 5 kids, you know, like all boys, there's a bigger chance that you'll end up being gay than, you know, if you're the oldest or anything like that. But it's not, you know, these studies, you can't really rely on them in a sense. So, and that's why for me personally, I really do not care whether somebody is gay by choice or biologically, because I don't think it makes a difference at the end of the day. Again, because I respect people's choices. If you're an adult and you can make choices, then what's wrong with that? If you're you know, choosing to be with another adult, you know, I don't think that's an issue. So the whole argument that whether it's a choice or not, to me, is nonsense. It does not matter.
I agree with you.
Yeah, but I know for myself it wasn't the choice that I made. Like, again, especially being that young, and I don't think, honestly, I don't think most people choose. I'm sure there are individual cases where people chose, maybe for whatever reason, but I think in general, it's not people like wake up one day and choose to be gay, or you know. Well, by saying gay, I mean lesbian and everybody else, including all the LGBTQ community. And maybe trauma, you said, like, you know, when people have trauma with their kids, maybe that can create it. So there are no like scientific like researches done on that. And a lot of people have trauma, obviously not all of them like end up being gay, so I don't think it's related. But maybe to somebody it is, because of trauma that he experienced as kids.
Okay, so I think we are beyond accepting gay people, for sure. But as a gay person, do you think, and this is like from a philosophical perspective, do you think there is a purpose besides the sex? Do you think, sometimes I wonder if this is actually to limit overpopulation, whether it's by God or not, biologically, whether it's, I'm surrounded by so many gay people that I think they're wonderful, really nice people. Maybe
we're fabulous.
I'm sorry?
We're all fabulous.
Yeah, and I mean it. Maybe this is actually to offset. But I don't know, what's your perspective? I'm asking you. What is your purpose for you being gay? I have a question, being gay, besides the sexual attraction?
No, I think like in life in general, the most important thing for any individual is growth. And if the means of that growth have to be through like another man, if you're a man, have to be through another man, or if you're a woman, have to be through another woman, then I think that might be the purpose why. You know, maybe you can't learn as much being with the opposite sex, you may not grow as much being with the opposite sex based on your personality and your beliefs and your philosophical, you know, thoughts and whatnot. So I don't think population, maybe, but I don't know. Like I don't have like, it's not like something that I'm sure of. It might be. Well, maybe we need more gay people. I mean, we're overpopulated in the world, but I don't think that's the reason. I just feel like I don't think there's a specific purpose why somebody's gay or not. You know, I just feel like maybe again because of your growth as an individual, you need a certain path, and sometimes it may happen better through somebody with the same sex than the opposite sex. That's how I personally feel. You know, but I may be wrong.
It's about intimacy.
It's about what?
Intimacy.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like, you know, I mean, intimacy is it's a very, I don't know how to explain this, it's just a very broad thing. I mean, what is really intimacy, you know? And I don't know, but I don't really have an answer for that. It's a thing, you know, just, yeah. But hey, that being said, I think women are also fabulous. Yes, I do. It's just like, we always make great friends. Okay, there's no more questions. It was quite lovely. Well, thank you all. I mean, I appreciate you, you know, listening and asking the questions and being interested. And this is like a good sign that we have people within the community who are open to listen, who are open to ask questions when needed. Unfortunately, as Wissam said earlier, you know, like, I don't think there's much hope for people over in the Middle East as much as here. And he brought like something that was very important, which is education. My experience is like the more I came across people who are educated within the community, their views towards homosexuality has been more positive than the ones who are not. And younger generation in general seem to have like kind of a universal agreement that they either don't care if you're gay or not, or they just, you know, embrace it completely. So it's usually the older generation, not older generation, I don't want to generalize, but the older generation, the uneducated, who again did not have the chance when they were growing up to be exposed to it, and now, you know, they're still living in their own small communities, and their friends are all kind of like in the same range. So these are the people that are kind of like hard to communicate with, but it's not impossible. I think it's possible. It's just a longer process. Go ahead. You mean Halim?
Yeah, fighting for gay rights, and we have Mashrua Leila.
Oh, I love Mashrua Leila.
We all love when the lead singer is openly gay and is involved in a lot, is a social activist.
Yes.
So I think that really things are also starting to change, and I do think that for us to maintain contact and to support each other across, you know, border is really important. To me, that sounds very heartfelt.
It is.
It's wonderful.
First of all, I admire Mashrua, I admire Hamid Simba, who is the lead vocalist. You know, for someone to actually in the Middle East, I mean, even here in the US, in a country that's an advanced country, to come out as a gay celebrity is still something hard to do. For someone like Hamid Simba, who lives in Lebanon, who speaks to an audience that happens to be all pretty much Arabs, to be able to come out and say, yes, I am a gay individual, and, you know, kind of like challenge the perception, I think it's just something to admire. I wouldn't admire it as much if somebody here did it, but there in the Middle East, I think it's awesome. But again, they're not really that well known. They're still kind of like a little more...
Their concerts are sold out everywhere in the world.
But they're still like, I mean, for example, my sister who lived in Lebanon, when I was talking to her about, like, I mean, that's just only one case. I was talking to her about, like, Mashrua Leila. She's like, who are these people? I'm like, well, you know, I had her listen to some of the music. But they're still kind of like underground as well. I'm sorry, is it my voice? Oh, okay. Oh, but yeah. Oh, thank you.
They're well known.